Chapter 8, Manhasset, New York, February 22nd, 2019, dusk. Before Donald Trump makes his bold move into billionaire land, it is worth noting his personal philosophy of life by looking at both his actions and words. Here we go. You're gonna love this. As I sit writing this chapter in my living room, I am resisting the temptation to analyze Mr. Trump because I'm not qualified to do that. What I am qualified to do is impart what I have seen and learned after knowing the president for so many years. I trust Bill here. I trust Bill. There is no question that Donald Trump's ambition exploded after he graduated from college. Yes, it did. And it was not driven solely by money. There were other things in play. I am not greedy. If you research what has been written about the businessman Trump, you will find mostly ill-informed drivel, even before he became the polarizing political figure he is today. Many articles about him are condescending and full of cheap shots. Why am I not surprised? Others are puff pieces designed to flatter him. I like that stuff. Most reportage is a total waste of time, the product of lazy reporters with agendas. That's why I call them fake news. They're the fake news media. I have the reasons for calling them the fake news media. And here's truth right here. They're fake. To understand the person who, against all odds, achieved the most powerful position in the world, you must listen to what he himself says. I have a lot to say. In 1990, already known to a national audience, Donald Trump gave an interview to Playboy magazine. That was a pretty big deal. Big celebrities were often featured in the Playboy Q&A. The magazine also put Trump on its cover, along with a nice-looking young woman. She looks very nice. That was unusual. Women almost always commanded the covers of Playboy by themselves. Not with me around. For much of the interview, Donald Trump is posturing, elaborating on his success in business and life. I have a lot to brag about. He talks about giant yachts and marble floors. The usual. Yeah, the usual. But then the conversation turns to Fred Trump Jr., Donald's elder brother by 8 years. As a boy, Donald looked up to Fred, who treated him with kindness. That's right, he did. The elder Trump brother attended Lehigh University, married young at 24, quickly had 2 children, and became a pilot, eventually flying for TWA. I'm proud of him. By his late 20s, Fred Trump Jr. had developed a drinking problem. Oh no. The death knell for an airline pilot. He spiraled downward, divorcing his wife and relocating to Florida to launch a commercial fishing venture. It failed. Such a shame. By the late 1970s, even as his younger brother was beginning to amass a fortune in Manhattan, Fred Jr. was back living with his parents in Queens and working for one of his father's maintenance crews. That's what alcohol will do with you. A few years later, in 1981, Fred Jr. died from problems related to alcoholism. It was sad when it happened. He was 42 years old. Rest in peace, Fred. Rest in peace. Take one environment, and it will work completely differently on different children, Donald Trump told the magazine. Our family environment, the competitiveness, was a negative for Fred. It wasn't easy for him, being cast in a very tough environment, and I think it played havoc on him. I was very close, and it was very sad when he died. The toughest situation I've had. His death affected everything. I think constantly that I never gave him thanks for it. He was the first Trump boy out there, and I subconsciously watched his moves. I saw people really taking advantage of Fred, and the lesson I learned was always to keep my guard up 100%, whereas he didn't. He didn't feel that there was a reason for that, which is a fatal mistake in life. People are too trusting. I'm a very untrusting guy. I study people all the time. automatically. It's my way of life for better or worse. I am very skeptical about people. That's self-preservation at work. I believe that, unfortunately, people are out for themselves. It's true, you know. People are out for themselves. Look at the Democrats. And the media. That kind of candor is a Trump trait. And to this day, I do not believe Donald Trump's philosophy of human beings has changed. It hasn't. Especially in Washington, D.C., huh? Indeed. He is essentially a loner, with few close friends. He can be gregarious, but is rarely revealing. He's emotional, but not nostalgic, nor does he regularly practice outreach to others. No, I don't. He essentially lives within himself, driven by success and the anticipation of public acknowledgement of his achievements. He does not rest easy, sleeping only about 4 hours a night. 4 hours a night? I love to work. What can I tell you? I need 8 hours of sleep. As his success grew, so did his lack of trust. Donald Trump even passed that along to his young children. We'd see him in the morning briefly before he went to work, and we went to school, Don Jr. told me. It was the daily lecture. You know, no smoking, no drinking, no drugs. And then, don't trust anyone. There were a couple of times he'd follow up with a question. Do you trust me? Of course, I said. You're my dad. He's like, wrong. You can't trust. As the world has turned meaner, led by the Twitter option that the president so much enjoys, Donald Trump's view of humanity has narrowed even further. Oh, yes it has. The prism now is how every person he encounters will affect him. That's his quick study and main evaluation. Sensitive about slights, the president is always on guard, and quick to react if he senses unfairness and negativity, which I always will. As I stated, Donald Trump did not want to speak to me for this book, and he did so only because we have a long-standing relationship. I can only trust Bill. I am certain he does not trust that a book of history about him will be beneficial to his life. No, I don't think so. But even though he doesn't fully trust me, he knows that I have always treated him and his family fairly. He also understands that when he asks me a question, I will answer it honestly, whether he likes the answer or not. I want the truth, and I can handle the truth. The truth is that many powerful and successful human beings are egocentric and emotionally distant. Pretty much all of them are like Trump, in that they lack trust and are almost devoid of concern for those who cannot help them. But most famous people hide those dubious attributes much better than Trump does. The president is not good at hiding stuff. Nope. His moods are often on vivid display. Everyone working in the West Wing knows quickly each morning that we are in for that day. And if you get on my dad's side, you're fired. Donald Trump has that New York thing. Blank you and the cab you drove in on, especially if things are not going well or if you are annoying him. Blank you and the cab you drove in on. In Washington, D.C., the world's center of political power, calculation is the coin of the realm, and rationalization is the bank you cash it in. That city has a long history of treachery and deceit. Abraham Lincoln was openly mocked as a hayseed when he arrived to run the country from Illinois. Ronald Reagan was looked upon by many in Washington society as a Hollywood moron. I don't think he was a Hollywood moron. Donald Trump did not understand Washington when he decided to run for president. No, I didn't. And he still doesn't understand it today. No, I don't. That's because he achieved his initial success in New York City, which is light years away from D.C. in attitude and behavior. Light years away. After his schooling, the young Donald developed into an economic hustler similar to his dad, but he incorporated a much smoother presentation. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you want to succeed in the big, tough city, you have to out-hustle your competition. You have to beat them, sometimes brutally. And that's exactly what I did to the competition I had to deal with in life. I beat them brutally. If you want to succeed in Washington, it's a different story. There, you must ingratiate the competition, a much more mannered hustle. The rules of polite society are many in the nation's capital, and you are expected to obey them. Outsiders, like the Obamas, will be accepted if they behave accordingly. But some people, for example, Richard Nixon, the Clintons, and Jimmy Carter, are never accepted. It is all about pedigree. Donald Trump is in the unacceptable category. They always consider me unacceptable. The only rule in the power precincts of New York is to keep a strong bank account. It doesn't matter what fork you use. In his climb to real estate royalty, Donald Trump had to accommodate corrupt politicians, mafia killers, union thugs, ruthless lawyers, and dishonest press people. And he did, sometimes gleefully. Business is business. But Trump did not temper his New York style and swagger when he rolled into Washington. His inauguration was met with widespread loathing, and he did little to win over the D.C. establishment. He simply did not understand the game because he didn't want to take the time to figure it out. It's a waste of time. In New York, it's in your face. In Washington, it's in your back. The fascinating thing about President Trump is that despite all the excess he embraces, the working folks outside the coastal cities like him. Yes, they do. The more extreme his presentation, the more applause he gets from the non-elite forces. It is hard to understand, but regular people accept him and overlook his faults when they don't overlook Hillary Clinton's deficiencies, for example. If they did, she'd be sitting in the White House right now. Thank God she's not. Perhaps the folks see Donald Trump as genuine. Yes, they do. I am genuine, which he mostly is. I told you so. There is not much difference between the public and private Trump. He likes people on a casual basis. Whenever I've been with him, he takes time to be nice to those with whom he interacts. When he tells them they are terrific, they beam. The decade of the 1970s saw Donald Trump rise and begin achieving stardom, something he wanted above all else. And I got it. By perseverance. He consolidated his success in the 1980s, but in both decades, there were bitter defeats and questionable activities. Trump can be generous, but also ruthless. He engenders both loyalty and loathing. His children love him, even though he was often not there for them while they were growing up. I have to work. But today, the eldest three are his best friends. In evaluating Donald Trump's ascension to the presidency, the practical thing to do is acknowledge that he used all available advantages to build his power. Yes, I did. He certainly did things that most people would not do. I will chronicle some of those things, but I will always give the president the presumption of innocence in unclear situations. That, of course, will anger the hate Trump media, which is in business to destroy him, and still are to this day. History will record that ongoing corrupt media campaign and how it has harmed America. The country deserves honest reporting on the president, who is capable of both good and bad. It is an undeniable fact that Donald Trump has achieved amazing things in his life. Those accomplishments were all centered on money until he entered national politics in 2015. So, let's find out how he made that money. You're gonna love these stories.